these friends had ties with gangs and drug, alcohol. It was just not a good environment. And actually, what the principal thought that he was helping Aaron get away from when he allowed Aaron to graduate early. So it was almost like a test for Aaron to see if he was going to be able to actually turn his life around and play for the Patriots as he promised to be good. And not only to be a good player, but to stay out of trouble. Or if he was going to go back to his old ways. But now with a bigger ego, knowing that back in Florida, the Gators had hit his back. And he probably expected the Patriots to do the same. On July 16th, 2012, a couple of friends, Severo Furtado and Daniel Diabreu, they went out to a club to have fun. They were not the kind of guys that would frequent this kind of scene very much, but they were having fun, they were drinking, they were dancing, they were just having a good time. When they had a little incident when one of them just kind of bumped into Aaron and spilled the drink that they had in their hands. Now, some people believe that this is very disrespectful and that this is something that, it shouldn't happen, and that especially if you see a celebrity or a football player or something like that, you should be so careful, maybe not even approach them, that kind of thing. But I find it interesting that they are in a club, they're dancing, they're drinking, they're probably drunk, some of them probably even high, and they expect to have the perfect balance to walk around a packed, full nightclub. So I do not get that part, but apparently this was something that Aaron didn't like, and he was pretty upset that these guys just spilled a drink on him and kind of ruined his night. Later on, witnesses will say that if it bothered Aaron, as we will learn later, it was something that he didn't show at the moment, but he kind of kept it in the back of his head or in the back burner for the rest of the night. When the night was over, Daniel and Severo got in their car, which was an older BMW. I'm hoping that one of them didn't drink, but that wouldn't matter because as soon as they left, they were stopped in a red light when a silver SUV stopped alongside of them and said, "What's up now, N-word?" And they shot Daniel and Severo 5 times. Now when the police arrived, they found both of them dead. And it was a very unique scene because there were no surveillance cameras. There was no shell casing because a revolver was used. It was a drive-by, which makes it very hard to find physical evidence. And overall, immediately became a cold case with just a few witnesses saying that it was a gray SUV that did it, or somebody inside that gray SUV did it. When the police checked the BMW, there were no drugs or there were no evidence or any kind of criminal activity that could have taken or that they might have been taking that night. Everything looked clean, like a couple of friends going to get some fun at a club. Witnesses again believe that it was a silver or gray Pathfinder, and when the police checked the surveillance cameras from the club, they actually spotted Aaron Hernandez, but you could see him go upstairs and then downstairs like he was leaving, and that's pretty much it. The police even joked that, oh, there's a celebrity, or there was a celebrity in the club, but they the suspect was Aaron Hernandez. At that time, the sergeant that was investigating the cold case, something clicked, and he thought, well, another murder 40 miles away, and Aaron is the suspect, and he kind of remembers seeing him in the surveillance video. So he tried to connect the dot and tried to see if he could find something, try to follow the footsteps of Aaron for the night there, because now that he was accused of killing somebody else, it was possible that he had something to do with what happened to Severo and Daniel. Maybe they should have questioned him. At least that's what the sergeant was thinking at the time. However, a few days later, after the double homicide that he was investigating and that went cold, Aaron got a $40 million contract. I mean, the guy was thriving, was doing amazing. Everything was going for him. So why would he do it? You see, the Patriot players are known for not having the best behavior, at least some of them. Remember that some of these players, this is their second chance, and to stay away from trouble, it gets really hard for some of them. Some can, and they turn their lives around. Some other ones can't really commit to do it. Now, Aaron was one of those that everyone knew that he was involved with troublemakers. They knew some of his friends, and one of them was Alexander Bradley. It got to the point that even in one of the conversations he had over the phone after he went to jail, he would talk to somebody about when he asked different people on his team, listen, if I go to jail, would you go visit me? And everyone said yes. So you don't really have to be a private investigator to realize that it wasn't a secret that Aaron was getting in trouble, that he was not turning his life around, and still he was being awarded, and he was being paid quite a bit of money to continue to play for the team. Now, Alexander Bradley was a local drug dealer. He was he had some kind of ties to gangs, and he was not a good friend to Aaron. According to some of their friends at the time, specifically a girl that would go with them, Aaron was very easy to manipulate to do whatever the other guy would want to. You know, for loyalty, for family, for friendship, nobody would mess with his friends. So they would go late at night, they would go to different places and start shooting and kind of giving that, trying to instill fear into some of the people that did not agree with Alexander or with him. However, again, the friend said that Aaron was a loyal guy, and maybe to a fault. Because of that, he got in a lot of trouble for stuff that really didn't matter. But he thought it did, since his friends were more like family to him. Aaron tried to do what they called the Patriot way, which basically says that you have to put the team first. But it was too much for Aaron. He was too deep, and he would continue to get in trouble. He was one of those players that'd be like, I will leave everything in the field, but my personal life, it's another business. Well, it shouldn't have been, because that's not what he agreed on in the beginning, but that's what actually happened. After a loss that the Patriots had, Aaron decided to go to Florida with a couple of his friends. Alexander Bradley, the one that we just talked about, and his other friend, I think his name is Yonde or Dante, I'm not sure, Thompson. Both of them, the three of them headed to Florida to have some fun. According to Thompson, he was very, very paranoid. Aaron was. He knew that he was being investigated, and he almost felt like everyone everyone was looking for him. There were a couple of guys in one of the nights that looked very suspicious to Aaron, and he was worried that they were police officers that were undercover trying to catch him in something. At this point, they decided to head to Miami to a strip club. They got there, they were partying, and according to records, they blew $10,000 in one night in that strip club. Now, they started having an argument, a petty one, according to Thompson, but they started arguing about something, and they continued to bicker in the car as they left the club, or the strip club. They were driving north on I-95 when Bradley fell asleep after finishing their bickering. When he fell asleep, he woke up to a gun between his eyebrows. And the next thing he remembers is the next morning when a police officer found him and he was shot between his eyes and he was bleeding, but he was conscious. I don't understand that part, and let me tell you, I've looked to different sources. I don't know how he did it. I don't know, he did it sideways. I don't know how this guy survived. But he tells the police that he doesn't know who shot him at that point. He started saying something. He said, like he was going to say Hispanic, but then he said black guys. Then when they asked him back at the hospital who did it, he said that he didn't want to cooperate with the investigation. Now, Aaron at that point left Florida and went back home, only to get a text and a call from what he thought it was a ghost, Alexander Bradley, saying something like, "You left me for dead. You owe me for what you did." Something along those lines. This continued, and Alexander Bradley was being more and more, I don't know how to say it, but like he was trying to get something out of it, not blackmailing him per se, but it was intimidating him, telling him how many guns he had and how ready he was to take him down, while Aaron would just respond, "If you mess with me, you know, you are gonna regret it. If you mess with me or my career, you're gonna regret it. I didn't do anything." And that's something that they continue over that 3-month period. At that point, Aaron thought that it would be smarter to actually talk to his manager about what was going on with Alexander. When he told his manager that allegedly the guy was saying that he shot him, the manager didn't want to deal with it, and it was more than he could deal with. So he decided to contact a lawyer firm to help Aaron with this matter. In the meantime, Aaron contacted one of his friends and hired him to be his bodyguard and personal assistant. This was another homie of his from Bristol. Aaron didn't share his fear. I mean, he wouldn't say that he was scared for his life, but his actions spoke louder. He ordered a shipment of guns and an armed car that was over $100,000. And again, he wasn't hiding, or he wasn't telling everyone how scared he was of Alexander, but he was actually getting ready because he knew that it was serious. At that point, Aaron decided to go and talk to his coach. The coach was about to leave for a conference, and Aaron asked him if he can be dropped or transferred to a West Coast team because he was afraid for his daughters and his fiance's life, not for himself. But he said that he gave a little different story extra security that could be added for him. I'm not sure if it was an apartment or a townhome in not a very good neighborhood and not a very expensive rent. However, when he got it, he asked that they didn't tell his wife, that not wife but fiance, that he got that place. This was going to be his hideout. So it doesn't really explain how he was scared for his fiance's and daughter's life, and he ended up finding somewhere where he can hang out with his homies or his friends or his gang related not so friendly friends. Again, that apartment was full of guns, drugs, and partying. Aaron got hurt, his shoulder actually, and the Patriots sent him to LA where he was going to get some surgery. He was going to be operated by one of the best surgeons, and they needed him for the season, so it was something that needed to be done and quickly. He ended up renting a townhome in Hermosa Beach, and he took his fiancée and daughter with him. He was supposed to go for surgery on March 26 of 2013, but the night before there was a disturbance where his fiancée called police saying that Aaron was out of control and that he punched a glass and cut his hand, and he was bleeding a lot and that she needed help. Now when the police arrived, they realized that he was very drunk and that he had a cut, and it was just a domestic disturbance, so they didn't search the place. They offered to take him to the hospital to get some stitches that he would need, but he said that his surgeon would take care of it in the morning. Now a week later, he was still in the same townhome when another incident happened, and his fiancée had to call 911 again. They showed up, he was drunk again, and it wasn't a surprise for the police that the disturbance came from there. He was very disturbed, and he was not, he was drinking a lot. He even told the officer if he would drive him to a bar. He tried to bond with the officer with tattoos, since the officer had some, and the officer said, "No way, I'm not going to take you to a bar. You're drunk as it is." Probably didn't say that, but he just didn't. And he also said later on, the officer, that he knew immediately that because of some of those tattoos that he was somewhat involved with a gang. Now leave it to a police officer in LA to figure that one out. Gangs are such a big problem there, but anyways, a few days later, his brother Jonathan came to visit and found him on the roof of the townhomes with a gun. He didn't know if it was loaded, but Aaron was having a very down time and he really didn't know what to do anymore. He was sad, drunk, maybe high, and he was complaining how he didn't see a way out. Now when he went back home, he continued to party. It was almost like he knew that the end was close and he didn't care. Or maybe he was going through something that didn't make him feel like, you're just ruining your life all by yourself. You don't need any extra help. He was staying up, he was doing drugs, he was drinking, he was getting in trouble with the police. And honestly, all the teammates and coaches and everything were just kind of fed up with him. They just couldn't take how irresponsible he was being out of the field. He was starting to get late to practices and games, and according to Aaron, a friend of his and a teammate, later on told him that the coach said that they were going to give him one more year, and if he didn't straighten up, they were suit, a civil suit against him, but he withdrew 4 days later. I mean, Aaron did get the summon to go and everything, but 4 days later he took it off for unknown reasons. I don't know if the lawyers had something to do with that, but it was something that was done and then undone pretty quickly. On June 18th, Aaron noticed that the police were outside of his home. He called his manager asking what was going on. A day before that, the police actually found a man, and it wasn't the police, it was a jogger who found a dead man in a park close to Hernandez. Now, they were suspecting that he had something to do with it. They found physical evidence that pointed that way. You see, Odin Lloyd was dating Aaron's fiance's sister. And the last time that he sent a text, he said that he was with Aaron Hernandez, Carlos Ortiz, and also the bodyguard. So it was interesting to know that Aaron was one of the last person to see him alive. Now the police found car keys inside his pocket, the dead guy's pocket, and the keys were a rental car or vehicle in the name of Aaron Hernandez. That was the beginning. But when they checked the surveillance cameras inside Aaron's house that night, and an hour before the death of this guy, it shows Aaron carrying a gun. Now, a few text messages, as I mentioned before, were found in his phone. One of them was at 3:07 a.m. when he texted his sister that he was with the crew of the NFL. He was really excited to be riding with Aaron and his friends. And that is how the police could piece together the evidence and kind of put Aaron with him at the time of the murder. At this point, the coach, knowing all these allegations, talked to Aaron and asked him, "Did you do this, or did you have anything to do with this?" And Aaron, with a straight face, said, "No, I had nothing to do with this." He left, but then he was arrested in his home. Only 45 minutes later, the Patriots dropped him from the team. Now, the owner and the coach of the Patriots, they all had to give statements, and they said that they had no idea that that's what he was doing, and that they were going to drop him, that they were disappointed in Aaron, and that they gave him a chance to prove them wrong, to prove the people that believe in him wrong. But he just didn't take advantage of it, and at this point they had no other option but to drop him from the Patriots. The owner even said that he just had no idea that Aaron was involved in all this, that he was a very respectful boy who would kiss him in the cheek and say, "Thank you, Mr. blah blah blah, for showing me the Patriot way." It looked like a very grateful guy to the owner. And again, according to him, he had no idea he was involved with all this kind of criminal activity. Some people, one of them, Greg Bedard, which is a sports reporter for the Patriots, said that maybe he should have dug a little bit deeper into what was going on in his life, into his roots in Bristol and his connection with gangs, and maybe that would have alerted the Patriots to keep an eye on him, to say something, or maybe to help Aaron get away from that situation. He blames himself for not digging a little bit deeper, and maybe by knowing that information or writing an article about it, maybe Aaron would have been on his toes, and that way maybe he would stay away from trouble. However, I think that he would this reporter could have done anything without putting his life at risk when dealing with people that have some kind of relation or connection with a gang. For them, people that will expose them, of course, will have to be, I don't know, silenced. So I mean, I wouldn't think that even if he wrote about what Aaron was doing, I don't think that he could have done anything or changed anything in Aaron's life. The coach told the players, or the Patriots, that Aaron was released. He wasn't going to come back, and he didn't want to talk about it, and he didn't want anybody in the locker room talking about him. Now at this point, remember the drive-by, well, not drive-by, but the shooting where the guy got hit in the head and the other one in the arm, and the responsible was never caught. Well, detectives are taking another look at Aaron's now that he is in jail, and yet something similar happened to him before, or where he was before. They take a better look and they try to follow Aaron to try to find something that would incriminate or would put him somewhere near the shooting place, or maybe even in the SUV. Later on, they get a search warrant and they go search Aaron's cousin's garage. Remember Tanya? Well, they went and they found a silver Pathfinder that when they did the gun residue test, they could find and actually confirm that that was the SUV where the shots were fired that night. At that point, Aaron was already in jail, but now they wanted to charge him with not one for Lloyd murder, the guy that was found dead by the jogger, but they also wanted to charge him with the other two that, one was in the head, the other one was in the arm, and it was attempted murder, and the other one was first-degree murder. So, if convicted only to one of those things, he would spend the rest of his life in jail. But Aaron wasn't worried. According to some of the phone calls that I've heard or listened to recently from him, he was very confident that the police had only circumstantial evidence and that he was going to spend some time in jail, but then actually be released pretty soon. That was his expectation. He didn't think he was going to spend a lot of time in jail. But in tomorrow's video, I will go through his experience through jail. We're gonna go through all the phone calls that he did and the people that he talked to while he was in jail, explaining the kind of life he had inside of jail, and a lot more that we didn't know in knowing it or learning about it from his own